Max Thornhill had three great loves in life: ancient Terran etymologies, xenolinguistic puzzles, and being left the hell alone. Unfortunately, today he was only getting to enjoy one of those things, the xenolinguistics, and it was coming with an unpleasant social gathering package deal. "Just to recap," said Director Fleming, a man whose eyebrows seemed perpetually furrowed like two angry caterpillars preparing for war. "You are going to translate. That's it. No improvising, no attempts at cultural understanding beyond what's strictly necessary, and absolutely no getting creative. The last time you got creative, the Centaurians thought we wanted to harvest their young." "That was a simple misunderstanding," Max protested, adjusting his regulation tie. "It felt like a noose. Their language uses the same word for admire and consume. Context is everything, which is why you're just going to translate word for word this time. The Vrexians are notoriously touchy. They've conquered 17 systems and have never signed a single peace treaty. This is unprecedented." Max sighed, staring at his reflection in the shuttle window. A lanky man with perpetually disheveled hair and glasses that kept sliding down his nose stared back at him. He didn't look like someone who should be involved in historic diplomatic proceedings. He looked like someone who should be cataloguing ancient texts in a basement somewhere, pausing occasionally to sip cold coffee. "I still don't understand why they requested me specifically," Max muttered. Fleming's face did something complicated, like he was trying to pass a kidney stone through his expression. "They didn't. They requested the human who speaks with the truest tongue. Our AI systems flagged you because you scored highest on accuracy in the xenolinguistic core." "Wonderful," Max grumbled. "My one sterling quality is literal mindedness." The shuttle docked with a gentle thud, and Director Fleming stood, straightening his immaculate uniform. "Remember," he said, pointing a finger so close to Max's face that he went momentarily cross-eyed. "Just translate." "Yes, sir," Max replied, wondering if it was too late to request an emergency appendectomy. "Just translate." "No problem." The doors hissed open, and Max stepped into what would become the most catastrophic and bizarrely triumphant day of his otherwise unremarkable life. The diplomatic station orbiting Jupiter's moon Europa was humanity's crown jewel of political architecture, a gleaming monument to mankind's aspirations among the stars. At least, that's what the brochure said. To Max, it looked like someone had taken the concept of corporate hotel and stretched it into a floating donut. Ambassador Diane Porter greeted them at the airlock, her smile as rigid and practiced as her perfect posture. Max had seen her on the news feeds many times, the face of human diplomacy, with her trademark silver bob and piercing blue eyes that looked like they could negotiate a peace treaty with a supernova. "Director Fleming, Dr. Thornhill, welcome aboard," she said, her voice carrying the artificial warmth of someone who had practiced sounding genuine in front of a mirror. "The Vrexian delegation arrived an hour ago. They're making themselves comfortable." A crash echoed down the corridor, followed by what sounded like an enraged gargle fighting a vacuum cleaner. "Very comfortable," she added, her smile not slipping a millimeter. "What was that?" Max asked, clutching his translation tablet a bit tighter. "Oh, just cultural differences," Ambassador Porter said airily. "The Vrexians express satisfaction by destroying furniture. We've prepared appropriate items for them to demolish. It's fine. All going according to protocol." Max's translation tablet pinged, and a holographic face popped up, a cartoonish approximation of a human with exaggerated features and a perpetual grin. Hello, Dr. Thornhill." The face chirped. "I'm Pip, your personal interface program. I've been assigned to help you with preliminary translations and cultural contexts." "I don't need an AI assistant," Max grumbled. "I have 16 PhDs in comparative xenolinguistics, and I have access to the entire intergalactic database of known languages," Pip replied cheerfully. "Plus, I can make funny faces." The hologram crossed its eyes and puffed out its cheeks. Max sighed. "Delightful." Ambassador Porter led them down a series of identical corridors until they reached a set of large doors emblazoned with both the Earth Alliance insignia and what appeared to be a sharp, angular symbol that Max recognized as the Vrexian Imperial crest. "Before we go in," Porter said, lowering her voice, "there are a few things you should know about Commander Grak Thar. He's the head of the Vrexian delegation, and, well, he's intense." Define intense, Max said, feeling a new headache beginning to form behind his eyes. The doors suddenly burst open, and a towering figure filled the frame. 8 feet of scaled muscle covered in ornate armor stood before them. The Vrexian's face was a collection of sharp angles and what appeared to be evolutionary adaptations for tearing flesh, with 4 yellow eyes arranged in a diamond pattern that all blinked independently of each other. Humans. The figure bellowed, the translation coming through Max's earpiece a second later. I am Commander Grak Thar, destroyer of the Pleiades sector, conqueror of the 13 moons of Caltac, and third-place winner of the Imperial Culinary Contest in the category of desserts. Max blinked. Did he just say? Yes, Porter whispered, her smile now looking painful. They take their desserts very seriously. It's a great honor. I have come to negotiate with your pitiful species. Grak Thar continued, then suddenly stopped and sniffed the air. All 4 eyes swiveled to focus on Max. Is this the one who speaks with the truest tongue? Director Fleming gave Max a tiny push forward. Yes, this is Dr. Max Thornhill, our finest xenolinguist. Grak Thar bent down until his face was inches from Max's. His breath smelled like cinnamon and battery acid. You are smaller than I expected. Your breeding program must be weak. Max said eloquently, thank you for having us. The commander suddenly threw back his head and emitted a sound like a garbage disposal eating a trumpet. Max's tablet helpfully identified it as laughter. I like this tiny word speaking human. He does not cower visibly. Grak Thar slapped Max on the back, nearly sending him sprawling. Come. We feast before we negotiate. As they followed the towering Vrexian into the conference room, Pip's holographic face popped up from Max's tablet. Just so you know, the AI whispered, when Vrexians say feast, they sometimes mean ritual combat. The words are very similar. Now you tell me, Max muttered, straightening his glasses and wondering if his health insurance covered dismemberment by alien diplomats. The conference room looked like it had been decorated by 2 completely different design teams who hated each other. One half featured Earth's sleek minimalism, with soft lighting and ergonomic chairs. The other half resembled a medieval torture chamber crossed with a heavy metal concert stage, complete with spikes, chains, and what appeared to be speakers made from actual skulls. Several more Vrexians stood around the room, each more intimidating than the last. One was sharpening what looked like a ceremonial dagger on her forearm scales. Another appeared to be bench-pressing a conference table. I have a bad feeling about this, Max whispered to Porter. The ambassador's smile remained fixed in place. Nonsense. Everything is proceeding exactly as planned. Just stick to the protocol, translate accurately, and we'll all be celebrating a historic peace treaty by dinner. Max had never heard a more doomed statement in his life. The formal negotiations began with what the humans had planned as a simple welcome ceremony. Ambassador Porter stood before the assembled delegations, a practiced smile firmly in place. Esteemed representatives of the mighty Vrexian Empire, she began, her voice echoing in the cavernous chamber. We are honored by your presence and look forward to establishing beneficial relations between our peoples. Max began translating, but immediately ran into a problem. The Vrexian language had 17 different words for honored, each with subtle cultural implications he hadn't fully grasped. He chose what he thought was the most diplomatic variant. Commander Grak Thar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, and then he emitted a bellowing laugh that made the light fixtures vibrate. The humans acknowledge our superior strength and breeding capabilities, he announced to his delegation. A promising start. Max frowned at his tablet. That wasn't what Porter had said at all. He glanced at Pip, whose holographic face was grimacing. Slight mistranslation, the AI whispered. You used the honor term reserved for acknowledging reproductive dominance. Now you tell me, Max hissed. Porter continued her speech, unaware of the miscommunication. We hope this meeting will be the foundation of a lasting peace between our species. Max hesitated over the word peace. According to his database, the Vrexian concept closest to peace literally translated to temporary cessation of glorious combat. He went with it, hoping context would clarify. Grak Thar stood suddenly, his massive frame casting a shadow over the table. The humans wish to engage in glorious combat with us. He sounded delighted. They seek to prove their worthiness before negotiating terms. What? No, Max spluttered. That's not what this is acceptable. Grakthar continued, pounding his armored chest. It has been too long since the Vrexian Empire has faced worthy opponents. The other Vrexians began a rhythmic thumping that Max's translator identified as their traditional pre-battle ritual. The human delegation looked around in confused panic. What's happening? Porter whispered frantically to Max. I think I accidentally told them we want to fight them before negotiating, Max admitted, desperately scrolling through his reference materials. There's a subtle distinction in their language between diplomatic engagement and physical engagement that the database didn't capture. Porter's perfect composure cracked. Fix it. Now, Max stood up, clearing his throat. Excuse me, Commander Grakthar. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. There is no misunderstanding in combat. Grakthar roared happily. The speaker of true words has made your challenge clear. No, what I meant was, who will be your champion? Grakthar demanded, looking at the human delegation expectantly. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Director Fleming looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. Ambassador Porter's smile had completely vanished. The other human diplomats were studiously examining the ceiling, the floor, their fingernails anything to avoid eye contact. We didn't bring a champion, Porter finally said, her voice tight. This was supposed to be a peaceful negotiation. Max translated this as carefully as possible, triple-checking every term. The Vrexian delegation exchanged confused looks. One of them, a slightly smaller female with elaborate facial markings, leaned forward and spoke rapidly to Grakthar. Max's translator rendered it as, perhaps they wish their translator to speak for them in the challenge of worthiness. Before Max could protest, Grakthar's face lit up with understanding. Ah, the speaker of true words is your champion. This is most fitting. All four of Grakthar's eyes locked onto Max. Prepare yourself, tiny word-speaking human. The challenge begins after the ceremonial consumption of nutrients. Max turned to Porter and Fleming, panic rising in his chest. Did he just name you as Earth's champion in some sort of ritual combat? Yes, he did, Porter said. Her diplomatic mask completely dropped to reveal pure horror. Director Fleming's face had gone an interesting shade of purple. What happened to just translate? He hissed. I tried. Max protested. Their language is full of contextual traps. The primary verb for negotiate is the same root as their word for ritual combat, with only tonal distinctions that humans can barely perceive. Well, untranslated. Fleming demanded. It doesn't work that way, Max said, desperately scanning his reference materials. Once a challenge has been accepted in Vrexian culture, withdrawing is considered. Oh, considered what? Porter asked. Considered grounds for immediate extermination of the retreating party's entire species, Max said weakly. The three humans stared at each other in horrified silence. Well, Porter finally said, straightening her jacket. It seems you've promoted yourself from translator to humanity's champion, Dr. Thornhill. Try not to get us all killed. Pip's holographic face popped up, somehow managing to look both sympathetic and amused. If it helps, the challenge of worthiness isn't usually fatal, statistically speaking. That's not remotely comforting, Max replied, watching as the Vrexians began what appeared to be pre-battle stretches that involved contortions he was quite certain human spines weren't designed to perform. Look on the bright side, Pip offered. At least you'll have me to help with translations during the challenges. Shall? Twa. Wonderful, Max muttered. I'll die with accurate subtitles. The ceremonial consumption of nutrients turned out to be less horrifying than Max had feared. While the Vrexians did consume what appeared to be still wriggling creatures from a tank, they served the humans a surprisingly pleasant meal of synthesized proteins formed into the shape of Earth delicacies. Is this supposed to be a last meal? Max asked, poking at what looked like a perfectly rendered filet mignon. Actually, Pip whispered from his tablet, in Vrexian culture, serving opponents familiar food is a sign of respect. They want you at your best for the challenges. How thoughtful, Max replied dryly. Any hints about what these challenges might involve? Disembowelment? Gladiatorial combat? Extreme Sudoku? Pip's holographic face scrunched in concentration. The challenge of worthiness traditionally consists of 3 tests: body, mind, and spirit. But the specifics vary depending on the challenger's strengths. Since you're a linguist, they might. Tiny word speaking human. Grak-Thar's booming voice cut through the dining hall. Are you prepared to face the first challenge? Max swallowed hard. As ready as I'll ever be, which is to say not at all. This translation seemed to please Grak-Thar, who pounded the table hard enough to make the cutlery jump. Excellent. Humility before battle is the mark of a true warrior. The first challenge took place in what the station schematics optimistically labeled Recreation Bay Alpha, but now resembled a nightmare obstacle course. Platforms hung at various heights, suspended over pools of bubbling liquid that Max sincerely hoped wasn't acid. The challenge of body. Grak-Thar announced, "You must reach the far side before the moons of Calbrex align." Max squinted at the timer on the wall, which appeared to be counting down from 10 minutes. "And if I don't?" Grak-Thar made that garbage disposal eating a trumpet laugh again. "Then you fall into the pool of ceremonial cleansing. Is it acid?" Max couldn't help asking. "Acid?" "No, it is flavored carbonated water. We are not barbarians." Grak-Thar seemed genuinely offended. Max approached the first platform cautiously. "So I just have to get across?" "That doesn't seem so." He was interrupted by a mechanical whirring as various sections of the course began to move, rotate, and occasionally emit jets of steam. "Bad," he finished weakly. What followed was 10 minutes of the most undignified scrambling, jumping, and occasional screaming of Max's life. While the Vrexians would have easily navigated the course with their powerful limbs and natural climbing abilities, Max's gangly human form was hilariously ill-suited for the task. However, what he lacked in physical prowess, he made up for in desperate creativity. Halfway through, he noticed patterns in the platform movements. They followed a sequence similar to rhythmic structures in Vrexian poetry. Anticipating the shifts, he managed to time his jumps to coincide with platform alignments. With 30 seconds remaining, Max made a final desperate leap, arms pinwheeling wildly, and crashed onto the finished platform face first just as the timer hit 0. The Vrexians erupted in what his translator identified as appreciative howls. "The tiny human uses weakness as strength," Grak-Thar bellowed approvingly. "Most amusing and worthy." Max picked himself up, adjusting his now cracked glasses. "Did I pass?" With great humor. Grak-Thar confirmed. "Now we proceed to the challenge of mind." The challenge of mind took place in a chamber filled with holographic symbols swirling in 3-dimensional space. As Max entered, the symbols coalesced into an intricate pattern that his linguist's eye immediately recognized as a complex language puzzle. "You must decipher the ancient tongue of the Calvexian priest kings," Grak-Thar announced. "None outside the imperial scholarly caste have done so in 7 generations." Max studied the symbols, his initial panic giving way to genuine interest. This, at least, was his territory. The patterns reminded him of Proto-Andromedan script, with elements of quantum state-dependent meanings similar to the Betelgeusian trade language. "This is actually fascinating," he murmured, forgetting momentarily that he was fighting for humanity's diplomatic future. "The grammatical structure appears to shift based on the relative position of certain glyphs." He became so absorbed in the puzzle that he barely noticed the Vrexians watching him with increasing interest. What they had expected to be an impossible challenge for a human was turning into an impromptu linguistic lecture, as Max began muttering about morphological drift and contextual semantics. "Do you see how this symbol changes meaning when it appears above rather than below its modifier?" Max asked excitedly, pointing to a particular cluster. "That's syntactically similar to how Vrexian battle poetry uses positional indicators to denote honor rankings." The Vrexian scholars in the delegation began making rapid notes, occasionally exchanging impressed glances. When Max finally completed the translation, a rather bloody epic poem about the conquest of a planetary system, the timer showed he had used only half the allotted time. Grak-Thar was silent for a long moment, all 4 eyes blinking out of sync. "The tiny word speaking human has wisdom beyond his size," he finally declared. "Most unexpected. Most worthy." Max pushed his glasses up his nose, feeling a strange boost of confidence. "What's next?" The challenge of spirit. Grak-Thar's mouthparts arranged themselves into what might have been a smile, if smiles were designed by someone with a profound misunderstanding of facial anatomy. Yes, and for this you must face me directly. As they left the chamber, Pip's holographic face appeared, looking impressed. You know, you might actually survive this. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Max replied, but found himself standing a bit straighter. Maybe he wasn't just here to translate after all. The final challenge took place in a circular arena that had definitely not been part of the original station blueprints. Max strongly suspected the Vrexians had modified the diplomatic station's structure without permission, which seemed on brand for a species that considered furniture destruction a form of greeting. The human delegation watched nervously from a viewing platform as Max entered the arena. Director Fleming looked like he was mentally drafting his resignation letter. Ambassador Porter had given up all pretense of diplomatic calm and was stress-eating appetizers from the buffet table. A challenge of spirit. Grak-Thar announced, his voice echoing in the chamber. In this test we shall determine if your inner essence is worthy of diplomatic relations with the Vrexian Empire. Max stood in the center of the arena, feeling distinctly underdressed for whatever spiritual showdown was about to occur. And how exactly do we test that? Grak-Thar drew what appeared to be a ceremonial dagger from his belt. It was curved, gleaming, and looked capable of gutting a rhinoceros with minimal effort. Face with this. Here, oh, Max said faintly. Is that really necessary? Of course. Grak-Thar bellowed. The Krentvak is the sacred implement of truth. Max was trying to think of a diplomatic way to suggest alternative implements of truth, perhaps a nice questionnaire, when Grak-Thar did something unexpected. Instead of advancing toward Max with the dagger, he turned it around and offered it handle first. You must cut me, Grak-Thar explained, and I must cut you. Then our bloods shall mingle, and the spirits will judge our worthiness. Max stared at the dagger. You want me to cut you? Yes. A small cut upon the palm is traditional, though warriors may choose more impressive locations to demonstrate courage. Pip's face appeared on Max's tablet. This is the Vrexian blood truth ritual, the AI explained hurriedly. It's considered the ultimate test of honesty in their culture. When blood is shed willingly, it's believed impossible to lie. Max hesitantly took the dagger. It was heavier than it looked, with intricate engravings along the blade that his linguistic instincts immediately started trying to decipher. So I cut your palm, you cut mine, and then we speak the truth of our intentions while our bloods mingle. If the spirits find worthiness, the mingled blood will glow with the sacred light. Max glanced desperately toward the human delegation. Ambassador Porter was making frantic cutting motions across her throat, which he took to mean don't do it rather than helpful dagger technique suggestions. Director Fleming appeared to have entered a state of catatonic horror. But then Max noticed something in the engravings on the blade, a pattern similar to the linguistic puzzle he'd just solved. The characters spoke of truth, honor, and understanding. Max had been approaching this all wrong. He wasn't just here to translate words. He was here to translate meaning, culture, intent, the true spirit of communication. I'll do it, he said, straightening his shoulders. But first, may I ask why the Vrexian Empire truly came to this meeting? Grak-Thar's 4 eyes blinked in surprise, to determine if humans are worthy allies or merely conquest fodder, of course. And what would make us worthy allies rather than conquest fodder? The Vrexian commander seemed taken aback by the direct question. Strength, honor, intelligence, and, Max prompted, understanding. Grak-Thar admitted. The galaxy grows cold. The ancient enemy stirs at the edges of known space. The Vrexian Empire has conquered many, but perhaps conquest alone will not be enough for what comes. Max nodded slowly. You need allies who can think differently, who can bring new perspectives. Yes, Grak-Thar said, more quietly than Max had heard him speak before, but weakness cannot be tolerated. Allies must be strong in their own way. Max looked down at the dagger, then back up at the towering alien. I think I understand the true challenge now. With careful precision, Max made a small cut on his own palm first, not deep, but enough to draw blood. The humans in the viewing area gasped. Casp. One. I, Max Thornhill of Earth, offer my blood freely, he said, speaking slowly and clearly in his best approximation of formal Vrexian speech patterns. Not because I am ordered to, but because I choose to. Earth does not seek conquest, but understanding. We do not wish to rule or be ruled, but to stand as equals under the stars. This is our strength not in domination, but in cooperation. Grak-Thar stared at him for a long moment, then let out a deep, rumbling sound that the translator didn't even attempt to interpret. He took the dagger and cut his own palm, releasing a flow of bright blue blood. I, Commander Grak-Thar of the Vrexian Empire. Acknowledge your words, he responded, his voice solemn. We have conquered because we believed it the only path to strength, but perhaps there are other strengths. They clasped their bleeding hands together. Max winced at the alien's powerful grip, but held firm. The mingled red and blue blood between their palms began to take on a purple hue that, to Max's surprise, actually did begin to emit a faint glow. The spirits have judged, Grak-Thar announced, his voice reverberating through the chamber. The human speaks with the truest tongue indeed, not merely in words, but in heart. The Vrexian delegation erupted in what Max now recognized as ceremonial approval, a combination of chest-pounding, furniture smashing, and that distinctive garbage disposal laugh. Did we pass? Max asked, somewhat dazed. Pass? Grak-Thar boomed, slapping Max on the back hard enough to nearly dislocate his shoulder. You have achieved what no other species has managed in 700 years of Vrexian expansion. You have earned true respect. As the glowing blood dripped down his arm, staining his formerly pristine translator's uniform, Max realized he had just made diplomatic history in the most improbable way possible. The treaty signing ceremony that followed was remarkably straightforward compared to the chaos that had preceded it. The terms were unexpectedly favorable to humanity: open trade routes, technological exchange, and mutual defense agreements that even Ambassador Porter admitted were beyond her wildest diplomatic dreams. Max stood to the side, his hand now bandaged but still stained blue in places that would probably never fully wash out. His uniform was torn, his glasses were cracked, and he had the distinct feeling that his career would never be the same. I don't understand, Director Fleming muttered, staring at the treaty terms. How did we get interstellar technology sharing rights? I was hoping at best for a non-aggression pact. Max understood them, Ambassador Porter said, looking at the disheveled linguist with newfound respect. Not just their words, but what they were really looking for. I just did my job, Max said with a shrug. I translated. Near. Tiny word speaking human. Grak-Thar approached, still imposing despite the ceremonial peace garments he now wore. You have brought great honor to your species this day. Thank you, Commander, Max replied, no longer flinching at the Vrexian's volume, though I'm still not entirely sure how I did it. You saw the truth behind the words, as all great translators must, Grak-Thar said, his four eyes blinking in what Max now recognized as a sign of approval. The Vrexian Empire has need of such wisdom. Perhaps you would consider joining our diplomatic corps as an advisor? Max blinked in surprise. Me? But I'm just the man who saved humanity from conquest and secured us the most favorable first contact treaty in Earth's history, Porter interrupted smoothly. I think we can arrange a special diplomatic posting, don't you, Director Fleming? Fleming, who looked like he was still processing the day's events, nodded weakly. As the formal ceremony concluded, Max found himself at the center of attention, something he'd spent most of his life actively avoiding. Humans and Vrexians alike approached to congratulate him. Someone had given him a drink that tasted suspiciously like victory and bad decisions. Pip's holographic face popped up from his tablet. So, how does it feel to be a hero? Uncomfortable, Max admitted. I prefer books to battles any day, yet you managed both. The AI noted cheerfully. Not bad for someone who was just there to translate. Max looked down at his blue-stained hands. That's the thing about translation. It's never just about the words. It's about building bridges between worlds. Very profound, Pip said. You should put that on your new business cards. Max Thornhill, xenolinguist, accidental hero, bridge builder. 3 months later, Max found himself in a new office on the diplomatic station, now permanently assigned as Earth's liaison to the Vrexian Empire. His walls were lined with both human linguistic texts and Vrexian battle poems. His desk featured a ceremonial dagger mounted on a plaque with an inscription in both languages, to the one who speaks with the truest tongue. Director Fleming entered without knocking, as had become his habit since Max's unexpected promotion. "The Arcturian delegation arrives tomorrow," he said without preamble. "Ambassador Porter wants you at the welcome ceremony. Just to translate," he added with pointed emphasis. Max smiled, adjusting his new glasses custom-made with unbreakable lenses, a gift from Grak Thar himself. "Of course," he said. "Just to translate." As Fleming left, Max caught his reflection in the polished surface of his desk. He still looked like someone who should be cataloguing ancient texts in a basement somewhere. But now at least he had better glasses. And perhaps, just perhaps, a bit more confidence in his ability to handle whatever the universe decided to throw at him next, even if it came with ceremonial bloodletting.